Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that's gone viral lately, something that's so fascinating. We're going to talk about deepfakes, and then we're going to take a look at how they work. Deepfakes are a real concern. This is a misleading practice where essentially someone inserts a fake face or speech into a video or a photograph. And this is actually becoming more and more sophisticated. And the rising capabilities of this technology behind deepfakes is making it easier to produce and harder to detect. So let's talk exactly about how deepfakes work, and we'll take a look at some of the machine learning tools that are used to create them. So let's kind of go back to the beginning. Neural networks, they're patterned after the neurons of our own brains. So they were first conceptualized way back in 1943. Innovative thinkers had considered how biological networks of the brain work and how this might become a model for AI, artificial intelligence. And by 1975, before most people were even using computers, the first neural network was developed. And these early roots were rudimentary, but the years between then and now have led to advanced technology consisting of different types of neural networks. So for example, like the synaptic pathways in the brain, neural networks react to stimuli, and they pass it through a series of nodes that process it and create a response or an output. And over time, more exposure to similar stimuli strengthens certain pathways and leads to the pruning away of others. So, for example, the network learns that eyes take a fairly predictable shape and are always located under the eyebrows. So then, this understanding is perpetually reinforced. And any initial confused idea that eyes and eyebrows are arranged differently becomes discarded. So in terms of the deepfake process, this allows for increasingly precise facial recognition, which then sets the stage for facial creation. So let's talk about how they get more accurate. When the layers of connections in a neural network reach a certain level of abundance and complexity, that system then becomes a deep learning structure. And this system can process massive amounts of input data, fine-tuning its understandings each and every time. So it ultimately has the capacity to do this automatically without even requiring a human's manual labeling of images or videos, which is pretty crazy. So when we return back to that brain comparison, its experience causes it to learn it on its own, as a developing baby would. There's no need for a parent to say, "These are my eyes," or "My mouth makes these sounds," because a baby already understands that, and such understandings take place automatically. And deep learning is very much the same. So the advances of deep learning have then led to computer recognition capabilities that can power all sorts of technologies. Things like automated driving, medical diagnosis, fraud detection, and home assistance, and those are just a few of them. But it also then provides greater possibility to make a convincing deepfake, a term that comes from the combination of deep learning and fakes. And with machines able to learn facial and audio patterns better and faster on its own, the construction of fake material becomes that much easier for those who want to use it. And that's the scary part. So let's talk about GANs, G-A-N-S. These are the superhighway to deepfakes. Perhaps the biggest stride of all in making undetectable deepfakes was the development of generative adversarial networks, or GANs. So the machine learning researcher Ian Goodfellow had come up with this method in 2014, and it essentially bridges the capability of detecting facial patterns with that of actually creating them. So what sets GAN apart, GAN, is that it consists of two neural networks, both already trained in deep learning recognition. The first one is called the generator, which has the task of creating fake media. And the second is the discriminator. So this is where it must determine whether the media is real or not. So it's essentially a game of dueling machines, but it's rigged because the game continues until the discriminator is no longer able to tell them when the generator gives it something fake. So at this point, the media is qualified for photo or video sharing amongst humans, who tend to be pretty bad discriminators themselves. So now that we know a little bit about deepfakes, the history, and how they're created, let's talk about what we can do when we see them. The unfortunate result of these machine learning capabilities is that it can influence really anything from the public perception of celebrities to even political events. So What can we do when we no longer can discriminate the real from the fake? Here's a few ideas. So the first is detect the less refined deepfakes that actually can be spotted. So we know the technology is getting more sophisticated, right? But there's still more amateur software out there that produces detectable fakes. At least highlighting on these ones with something like a video authenticator can curb part of that problem. My next suggestion is considering the media source and path. Along the lines of Project Origin, which is a software that verifies a video's original source and any modifications it's gone through, viewers should consider where a video or image comes from and ask themselves where it's been passed along from. Is the publisher a reliable source? Is the platform or place where people can typically share trustworthy news? My third suggestion is sharpening our social and critical thinking skills. So beginning to think more critically about the media that we consume is a really good habit to develop. Ask yourself the question, does the content make logical sense? How does it compare to other relatable material? As Ian Goodfellow himself had suggested, learning how to assess misleading claims should become a regular part of educational curriculum, even starting with kids. And my last suggestion is to pursue or support the regulation of fabricated media. Deepfakes are in a tricky gray space between freedom of speech and unfair manipulation. And while this is really difficult terrain, it would be wise for us as a society to move toward greater security, transparency, and verified information. This could take the form of broadly recognized standards, initiatives, or government legislation. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen to our podcast today, all about deepfakes, where they originate from, and what we can do when we see them. See you next time.